SMO may be being held inside this facility. I'm going in. I won't be long. Hold the attention of the Order's forces for me. There's movement in the pattern of the enemy forces. They may be waiting for reinforcements. Survey of the facility is almost complete. Hold on just a little longer. It's highly likely that a bogus commander will appear. If you see one, eliminate them immediately. Enemy target identified.
Hey everyone, Lukium here, and today I'm bringing you a build for Bunny that's supposed to be what I think is the most optimal build that you can run for farming most materials. Now, before I start, I want to take a minute to talk about the community. If you'd like to skip to the build, just use the timeline. I'll have a chapter where you can skip right to. It has been absolutely incredible, my experience in the last 24 hours. I thought that my video for the Lepic build was gonna get like 100 views, maybe a subscriber or two. We're about to hit 20,000 views and over 250 subscribers as of the time that I'm recording this video. I have no idea how to even express how I feel about this. I just want to thank you all for the support. There's just been an outpouring of positive comments and encouragement, and I don't even know how to express how I feel. So thank you all for the support so far. I'm definitely going to be making a lot more videos for everyone. I already have a few things planned out. I'm thinking about a series about how to make builds. I'm thinking about making a whole series of builds for each of the Descendants at about 3 catalysts each, so that if anybody has a character they prefer, they can have a good idea of a solid build that they can use for that character. And if anybody has any suggestions for other general ideas for videos, please drop a comment, reach out to me on the Discord, come to my Twitch channel, we can chat about it. Whatever it is, I am happy to interact with the community and work together to make some great content for everyone. Again, thank you for the support. You all have been just incredibly amazing. I also wanted to mention that I did create a Nexon Creators account. If you would be willing to support me as I start growing this channel, it would be amazing if you could look for me in-game. I will have a small video linked in here that shows you how you can assign me as your creator. If you could do this, it would only take about 30 seconds and you would help me out a whole lot. So I thank you ahead of time if you're able to do this. Now on with the build video. Now that we're here at the lab, let's start talking about the mods that I'm using. First and foremost, I'm using a maxed out increased defense and an increased HP. The reason for this is that you don't want to be constantly dying. If you don't have some amount of survivability, you're just going to struggle doing any kind of mobbing. Next, I have maximized range and skill expansion, which gives us a total increased range of 186.7%. Now, let's talk about range. The reason why you want to focus on range more than anything else when it comes to Bunny and other characters that deal AoE damage is the fact that range is going to have an impact on the area that you can do damage to in an exponential manner. What does that mean? For every meter that we add to our radius here, which has a base value of 7, it will have a square impact on the total area that we can do damage to, because when we're talking about area, we're talking about 2 dimensions, right? So the total area of a circle is pi times the square of the radius, which means that the radius has a square impact on the total area that you cover. Now I'm going to bring in a visual aid. I don't want to scare anybody. It's a graph. It may look complicated, but it's really not. What this is basically the curve x squared with all the points between 7 and 21. The main thing that you want to notice from here is that as you go from left to right and you're increasing your radius from 7 to 8 to 9 all the way to 21, you can see what your actual area is. So for example, when you go from 7 to 8, your area increases from 49 to 64, which is an increase of 15. Now, when you go from 20 to 21, that's an increase of 41. The main points that you want to take from this is that this is the opposite of diminishing returns. This is exponential gains, which is why you really want to focus on range more than anything else. The reason why this is so important with Bunny is the fact that you do damage with your number 3 ability, which of course is going to be the basis of the build, based on the distance that you travel. So imagine that you're approaching an enemy and it's pretty far from you. If you have a radius of 21 meters, you're going to start damaging that enemy 3 times sooner than if you have a 7-meter radius. And as you're running past that enemy, you're going to be able to hit that enemy multiple times because you have such a big area of effect. What that means is that you can effectively increase your damage without increasing your damage, because you're actually increasing the number of times that you're hitting that enemy, right? So if you're running through a dungeon or you're running through a mission, that gives you the ability to hit more enemies and do more damage to said enemies without having to increase your damage directly at all. So you're going to have a much better time if you're increasing your range than if you're focusing directly on your damage. So now that we've maxed out the range, we're at 300% and we can no longer focus on range, we're going to start looking at duration and we're going to start looking at damage. Your goal here is to achieve a duration that is slightly bigger than your cooldown, because that's going to allow you to keep the number 3 ability running forever, essentially. Anytime it runs out, you can just pop it again, so you never have downtime. So as you can see here, I have a duration of 28.8 seconds and a cooldown of 28.2 seconds. So this is pretty well optimized to give you the maximum duration that you can with a cooldown that allows you to run the ability all the time. To achieve this, I'm running a skill extension, just one maxed out one. I don't need any other mods for duration because of a few other items that we're going to talk about later. And finally, we're running a maxed out focus on electric, which gives us a 6.1% skill cooldown. That just puts us right below that duration, and it increases the skill power by 77.2%. Furthermore, we're adding a little bit more damage using multi-talented. Now, you may be able to have a maxed out multi-talented. When I first started doing this build, this was the very first catalyst I used. I actually threw it into the melee slot just to see how it worked. It was kind of like a sacrifice for the community. I dropped the results on Reddit. I don't think anybody had used a catalyst on the melee slot yet when I used it. So had I known it, I would not have used it on the melee slot. I would probably have used on the maximized range slot, so that I would have gotten a 7 reduction in the cost, which would mean that my module capacity right now would be 80 instead of 85, but my total cost would be 78 instead of 85. So I would actually have 2 more capacity available, which would have allowed me to have a maxed out multi-talented. So if you're going by my build, do not throw a catalyst on the melee slot until you're planning to actually max out Bunny. Instead, aim for one of the other mods that have a higher cost. That will give you a better efficiency overall. And finally, we're running MP Collector, because that gives us the ability to keep running with our number 2 ability near permanently, depending on the amount of enemies we're killing. Now, on to the other items that go into the build. As you can see, I'm not running a gold reactor. If you have one that goes with a powerful weapon that you have, by all means use it. That's only going to add to your damage. But one thing that you do want to have, more likely than not, is some amount of duration and preferably some amount of range. If you don't have any duration on your reactor, you're going to have to use a different kind of setup in here in order to get your duration and cooldown to be optimized, which means that you may have to use an additional mod for duration, which would really hurt the build. So I strongly recommend that you have duration up on your reactor so that you can have an optimized build on the mod side. Finally, I suggest that you also have range on the reactor, because that's the only way that you're going to max out your total radius. If you don't have range, this is not going to be 21. I mean, it may not be the end of the world, but then you're definitely not going to be taking advantage of that square gain to your range, which translates into damage. So I would say that your best bet will be skill duration up and skill effect range up. Now let's talk about your external component set. I strongly suggest that you use the Annihilation set, which draws from the Devourer. The reason being twofold. One, it's going to give you an additional 5.7% duration, which again, it's helping you optimize your mods such that you only need one duration mod in order to get the balance of cooldown and duration to run the ability all the time. And it's the only set, I think, that will not only give you additional duration, but it can also drop with defense and HP for all of the stats, right? So as you can see, the auxiliary power has defense for its main stat. The sensor has defense for its main stat. The memory has HP for its main stat. And the processor also has HP for its main stat. Now, depending on what kind of content you're running, each one of the external component slots can drop with elemental defense. So auxiliary power can drop with fire resistance. The sensor can drop with chill resistance. The memory can drop with electric resistance. And the processor can drop with toxin resistance. You don't have to run all the resistances all the time, but it's nice to know that that's available, especially if you might want to further develop this build into a bossing build. That means then that you can have additional defenses for all the different elements equipped at the same time. Now, when you're running the mobbing build, you may want to remove some of those resistances, and you may instead want to run something like this, where you can have additional gold drop increase modifier. Some of the other slots may have character EXP gain modifier. There is one for Kuiper that is on the auxiliary power. So if you're farming for Kuiper and gold, you could run an auxiliary power that has additional Kuiper and a memory that has additional gold drops. So there's a lot of options available here. I know that the auxiliary power can also drop, I believe, with a chance to increase module drops. So if you're hunting for mods, you can use that instead. So as you can see, the auxiliary power can drop module drop rate increase. So do keep that in mind. You want to watch for these bonuses because they are substantial, and over time they will make a big difference in your build. Now, one thing that I'm not really going over here is the weapon setup that you might want to use. By all means, it definitely makes sense to run Thunder Cage if you have a powerful one set up. I don't have one. The whole focus of this video is the Descendant itself. If you have a good mobbing build, chances are that you probably don't even have to fire a bullet most of the time. And that was really my goal in developing this build. So let me give you a demonstration of why range is so important. Look how soon I'm going to start damaging these guys, and how many times I'll be able to damage them as I walk or run past them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Right? So even though my build is not fully focused on damage, because my range is so long, it allows me to hit these guys a total of 7 times. Whereas if my range was smaller, there is no way that I could multiply my damage by 7 times to make up the difference. So if I'm trying to run through a dungeon, this is going to give me the ability to kill the most amount of enemies with the least amount of effort. Alright everyone, and this concludes the bunny build. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Since I already ran the Abandoned Refinery Unit in the intro, I'm going to leave you some footage of the anticipated ambush point and fortress outskirts, which are some of the biggest farming spots right now, so you can see how this build performs. Please consider subscribing, dropping a like, and if you have any suggestions, please leave a comment or reach out in the Discord or on Twitch. Have a good one, and thank you for watching.
You've been ambushed? Or did you let it happen? As a feint, it worked well. But you mustn't let your guard down. Those Vulgus cyborgs have had quite a few upgrades recently. You may suddenly encounter powerful units that aren't in our database. Oh, we're definitely in Vulgus-occupied territory. There's no end to them.
High-level Volga's closing in. We've confirmed it's a new Kuiper-enhanced variant.
Huh. It's built from the same material as the one we're...
We need to occupy the outskirts of the fortress so we can fully investigate the facility. You lead the battle. I'll check out the other facilities. There's an underground waterway. If I use it to spread out, I can investigate without getting caught.
It's Eugen here. There's something I want to check. I need you to collect as many DNA samples as possible from the Vulgus nearby. I hope my speculation is wrong, but I need confirmation. I'll need a variety of samples. Thanks for doing this.